Right,
I
so
don't
I'm
mind
gonna
it
go
either
ahead
way.
and
You
start
go
the
ahead.
stream.
All right. Let me just turn my phone off just so it didn't
Okay,
go
so
off
welcome
in
to the
this.
HUMANE Mind episode 33, or the HUMANE Mind Live episode 33, and today we are discussing economics once again, this time focused a little bit more on banking in general, and the main topic I want to talk about is fractional reserve lending. I'm joined by Lonely Wolf and S-Man, and S-Man had some questions before we started streaming, and so I'll let him get into
All right.
that.
I'll start my stream and then we can get into it. We're live. All right. Welcome to Poor Bastards 125. We're going to be talking about economics, a break from I don't know how long at this point, how many times we've chatted about religion in the last few weeks.
Yeah,
So
it's
we're
been
going
a
to talk
couple of
about,
weeks, like
yeah, we
6 weeks maybe.
around that time, yeah. So we're going to be talking about fractional reserves and banking in general, and just economics and that type of thing. Where
Right.
where would you like to start, Humane?
Okay, and I do want to say one more point. So I know we talked about religion a lot, and there was a lot brought up in that, and I just want to let people know there were a lot of arguments that were brought up that I did not get a chance to address, and so I'm kind of making this is a poor excuse, but it is reality. Is I seem to have been the only one kind of defending religion for the most part, and was being bombarded by several people at a time. So someone would bring up an argument, and then somebody else would bring up another argument, and we never got around to addressing arguments presented. Another part of that
Yeah.
is some of these arguments, first time hearing them, and it's like, oh, well, I got to go and look into what the context of what they're saying, because a lot of times it would just be one or two scriptures, and you're like, well, what is this? What are they talking about in this instance? What is the is this to a particular individual? Is this a particular out of context? Sure, it looks bad, but I don't know the full story, and also I don't know if there is a good justification because I haven't heard both arguments for and against. So I'm going to be addressing those sorts of things in a separate video. It won't be on a stream. It'll be on a recorder, an actual recorded video. Now that I'm out of school, I will be making those once again. But I do need to wrap up my AIU slash free speech video that I'm currently working on, and it's still 4.5 hours long because there's so much content about AIU admitting doxing or information. I was like, dude, nobody's gonna sit through the four. I'm trying to get it down to about 45 minutes, but there's a lot of information there.
Yeah.
So so that's a nightmare of editing at the moment. Um, okay, back to the economics in general. So you
Hmm.
brought up Milton Friedman, and so when I was talking to Owen McDonald and we had our discussion, Owen McDonald labeled Milton Friedman a war criminal, even though Milton Friedman has never been in a war to the best of my knowledge. He's never been a military commander. I mean, if he was in a war, it was as an infantry or like this would have been probably earlier in his life if he was drafted into a military. To the best of my knowledge, he
I'm I'm
that
looking
that
it up
wasn't the
right now.
case. But he's never
Uh,
been in charge, and he was never charged with a war crime while he was in. If he was, I don't know much about. He's not
yeah.
famous for his military career, obviously.
Yeah. I'm looking into it right now. There is nothing talking. Hey, can you tell your bird to stop bird splaining, Lonely Wolf? Um. Yeah. So I'm looking it up right now. There is no record that I can find right now saying that Milton Friedman was in any military position. But yeah. The
So
reason, well, I do see like for those who don't know, people because Milton Friedman was I guess an economic advisor
mhm.
to he gave some economic advice to to Pinochet and to Ronald Reagan, and because of
And
the
also to China. That's one
oh
thing that
yeah,
they often forget. They want to like, oh, look at all the damage caused by Reagan. Look at all the damage caused by Pinochet. Milton Friedman went to China. He went over there for several years, advising them on economic policy. And a
hmm
lot of their current capitalist policies were a direct result of that. So a lot of their economic boom, right, that they're experiencing at the moment, they can attribute to Milton Friedman. And there was no military coup. That's what their leaders adopted voluntarily.
Yeah, and to me, it's funny. It's like, so let me get this straight, right? If I were to give economic advice to a leader of a country, and that leader ended up turning into some psychotic dictator, or
Mm-hmm.
is a psychotic dictator, I'm going to be held responsible, or should be held responsible over that person's actions that I had nothing to do with. It's like saying, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, Bill Clinton's a rapist," but because you gave some advice to Bill Clinton, you're also a rapist. It makes
Yeah.
no
It
sense.
the well the, by Owen's own argument, Karl Marx is also a war criminal because people took his advice, right, for socialist and communist regimes, killed millions of their own people, and also started wars and civil wars and outright wars with other countries. I mean, the whole Cold War between the United States and Russia was because Russia, or sorry, not Russia, but the USSR at the time was completely communist. Had they not embraced the ideas of Karl Marx, that dispute and those wars and the deaths involved in that, he's a war criminal because people did war crimes, mm, doesn't add up. No, I think his philosophy was fundamentally flawed. I don't think he was a war criminal. Hitler, you could make the argument, and a very credible, or like valid argument, that he was a war criminal because he was in charge of his military when he's commanding him to do things that were
Against the
crimes,
law.
yeah, crimes against humanity. Yeah, they were crimes even in times of war. Same thing with
Yeah.
Gulag Archipelago. Not necessarily during times of war, because this was mostly a time of peace where the people were being put into concentration camps, or I mean they were called the gulags or whatever, and executed and never heard from again, buried in unmarked graves, that sort of thing. And this was happening constantly by the administration that was put in place that was utilizing the ideology of Marx.
Yeah.
So I don't see how you could be like, oh, Milton Friedman is a war criminal because of Pinochet, and you're like, but Karl Marx isn't a war criminal because of Stalin and Mussolini and Mao, Pol Pot.
But you got to
Something.
remember, it wasn't true communism. It wasn't true communism. It wasn't true socialism at all, you
Oh,
know.
but Pinochet was true capitalism. You're like, yeah, it
Oh my God.
the that's the part that doesn't make sense. Okay. Oh,
No,
and so,
I don't
so
think anyone will
going
ever.
so when Milton Friedman is talking about China, now China had a peaceful transition from communism to capitalism. They're still not fully capitalistic, I understand this, but they started adopting a lot more capitalist policies because had they continued on there, they knew, oh, if we keep this up, we're going to go the same way as every other communist country. We want to avoid the fate of Russia. We want to avoid the breadlines, but that's where we're headed. So they started adopting some of Milton Friedman's, and I think that is actually part of the reason why their finance minister invited Friedman over in the first place. Is they're like, hey, we're seeing these economic declines, our country's headed towards disaster. And one of the things Milton Friedman likes to tell this story, he went over to China and they were showing him a construction project, and he asked the advisor, why are these men using shovels and not using machinery? I mean, because this was they had they had bulldozers, they had cranes, and all this sort of thing, and yet the construction workers were using shovel. And the advisor told him, "This is a jobs project." And Milton Friedman says, "Oh, this is a jobs project. So why are they using shovels and not spoons?"
Yeah.
It's to point out the idiocy of like, wait a minute, if yeah, it's you're like, oh, they could be using equipment to make the job go faster and get the job done, but because you want to give people jobs, it's like, well, if you're trying to give people jobs, make it inefficient, make them do this. Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is something tying this back to the U.S. That's something that's being like, oh yeah, look how many jobs we have in the this is how many jobs were added to the economy, and I'm like, that's a stupid fucking number. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a stupid metric to analyze a country's economic impact because you
Yeah.
can have. So this is, I believe this is a Hayek quote. I don't know if this is exact. Again, I'm not very good at exact quotes, but it's something to the extent of you can have every man and woman employed in the military or in the nation's armies and fleets, and have millions of jobs and nothing to eat. Right? I think that's it's actually I
Yeah.
think that was from the rap battle version of it, but. Yeah, you can have
Yeah.
full employment. Yeah, okay, you can draft every man into the nation's armies and fleets and have full employment and nothing to eat. That was it. That's from
Yeah.
the rap version of the Hayek versus Keynes. Um,
Yeah. There's also I found
it's yeah.
yeah, I actually also found apparently because Milton Friedman did actually talk about his involvement with Chile. He
Mm-hmm.
says he took to Chile during March 1975, less than 2 years after the coup that disposed of President Salvador Allende. Apparently, that's how to pronounce it. Apparently, Friedman answered that he was never an advisor to the dictatorship, but only gave some lectures and seminars on inflation and met with officials, including Augusto Pinochet, while in Chile. Um,
Oh, okay. So
and
he was actually
yeah,
there after the military coup.
oh yeah, because they call the coup, which happened on 9/11 of '73, the first 9/11, which I guess you could say that, but
Yeah.
at least it was the first one that the world has noted. But yeah, it's let's see. He wrote to the Stanford Daily asking if he should anticipate a similar avalanche of protests for having been willing giving Jesus an avalanche of protests for having been willing to give advice to so evil a government, and if not, why not? Hmm,
But
that's
as
really
we
interesting.
saw with the adoption of those economic policies, that government in Chile became more free over time. As this is a trend in every country that has capitalistic policies, and this is something that is also happening in China, although to a much slower extent. Is the more economic freedom people get, the more social freedoms they start to demand. It's that taste of freedom in one area is saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got freedom here and things are going better here. Why are we still why are we still locked in here? Why are these areas why are we not free in these other
Mm-hmm.
areas? And so it starts to change the mindset of the people in that society, and they start to demand more freedoms in other areas because they've experienced, hey, works really great here. This is amazing for us. Let's push it in these other areas. So
Yeah.
that there's China's not the only example, but so in Chile, the government of Pinochet was pretty authoritarian when it was implemented. I thought Milton Friedman had given advice and stuff before the military coup, but apparently it was all after the military coup. So
Less than 2 years, yeah. Of March
what
of
the
'75, which, according
like
to the source I found, I'm
that
going to see if I can
that doesn't
pull it up
make
again.
yeah that the timeline doesn't
Great.
add up for him to be a military criminal. Then that's or a
Yeah,
war
because
criminal. That doesn't. It's like if he had been there beforehand, yes. After the
then,
fact,
yeah, yeah. Like,
that
I mean, it's like it's. I don't know. It was very confusing when I read that. Let's see. Visit Chile. Let me see. If, okay, a controversial 7-day trip. Let me click on the link. Uh,
that's
that's weird.
that's
Um,
that's a goofy interpretation of history and of the events that happened. Not only is he
yeah.
blaming for him for something the man actually didn't do or didn't have any authority over, but also
Mm-hmm.
blaming him for something that happened before he even showed up. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I guess it's similar to them blaming Americans today for slavery. I'm like, wait, that was done decades before we even got here. How can we still be responsible for that shit?
Yeah, and that we Americans are blamed for the war crimes that the government has committed, and I have to spell that out to people.
Yeah, and it's like,
The,
did we have a say in this?
yeah,
I sure as hell didn't.
yeah. I think the one, like if Owen would have said Nixon and Kissinger are war criminals, I'd say yeah.
Hmm.
I'd have to.
That's
I wouldn't
yeah.
disagree with.
I could see his argument for that, and I still think that's very debatable. But yeah, I could see an argument being made for that because they are actually the ones making those decisions. They are the ones pulling those strings and having the authority over those actions.
Yeah, and okay, so I found
Well,
the source which
Kissinger
said,
not as much,
yeah,
but he was a direct advisor to president, and then the president is acting
yeah,
on those. Whereas Milton Friedman had no authority. He's going in there and saying, "Hey, this if you want a good economy, this is how you do it."
yeah, and so I found the source to back up the claim that he visited the. It says Pinochet encouraged the visit to Santiago in March 1975 of their guru, Professor Milton Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
He approved of the dictatorship and chose not to criticize the assassinations, illegal imprisonments, torture, exile, and other atrocities,
But
all, all exhaustively chronicled by Amnesty International, now
uh,
being carried out in the name of the free market, it says.
but
Which,
he was asked there to give economic advice, not to tell them, not to
how to run the
criticize them
government.
about their military actions and their assassinations.
Yeah.
That again, that's like, oh, you went there and you didn't condemn them. I'm like, it's not his place to condemn them. Had he done that,
Who
considering
knows?
they're a military authoritarian government, he goes in there to give an economic lecture and then uses his time to criticize the government. Milton Friedman's not going to be around anymore. That's the last peep you're ever going to hear of the man.
And, his, but it's
Yeah,
like,
so
yeah, his criticisms of that government would be the second to last thing going in his head. But, I mean,
yeah, yeah, the first thing being a bullet, yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, it's been debatable with people as to whether or not the free market policies he advocated for have led to the economy, like, improving in countries or
So,
not. And it's always going to be debatable, just like other political, like, economic policies of, like, various presidents, for instance.
and by that same logic, wouldn't Dennis Rodman also be kind of like, oh, you're guilty of all the atrocities of Kim Jong, Il or Un or
The
Kim
current
Jong
one is
Un,
Un.
right?
Yeah. The
So
current,
which one did Dennis
incumbent
Rodman visit? Was it his dad or was it the current one?
I'm gonna find out. Dennis Rodman.
Because Dennis Rodman went over to North Korea, hung out with the guy. It might have been Kim Jong Un.
Yes, it was
Okay.
Kim Jong Un. The articles are from the year
Yeah,
2017 and 18.
Dennis Rodman didn't go over there and be like, "Oh, you guys are this is terrible. You're not feeding your people." No, and what
He'll
criticism
try.
did Dennis? Where's the criticism against Dennis Rodman? Like, oh, I
Yeah,
can't believe you. You went over to North Korea and you didn't fix all the problems there.
yeah. So
That's
I
the
found an article that was published literally a minute ago, or if I refresh the page, it'll probably be a little older than that. Saying, let me see if I can click the link again. It says your local post office could become a bank if this bill passes, and it's from some senator of New York.
really.
Aims to make loans more affordable by offering retail banking services at the United States Postal Service. Which I'll send you the link in the Poor Bastards in
That
order
seems a bit
to.
odd.
Yeah, I'll send the link in the Poor Bastards chat in order to.
Okay.
So since we'll be talking about banking and.
Oh, yeah, and the other thing
yeah.
I do want to mention, Milton
Yeah.
Friedman's big, he had a series of TV shows called, oh wow, Free to Choose, right? That was his kind of, they were kind of like documentary style lectures, and I believe, yeah, so they, I mean, these were, I don't know if they were popular at the time, because I watched them all on YouTube and that sort of thing, catching up after the fact. And in one of them, he's actually being questioned by Michael Moore when Michael Moore was actually like looked like a human instead of like a Jabba the Hutt wannabe. No, it's yeah. So it's when Michael Moore asking the question and Milton Friedman is giving responses. But the free to choose is all about taking power away from government and giving it back to the consumers. And if he's going into Chile and advocating for the similar policies and for similar economic efforts, that is actually taking power from the authoritarian dictator and giving it back to the people. If
Yeah.
it's to the best of my knowledge, he didn't contradict himself when he was giving those lectures in Chile, and if that was his platform and that's his his economic message, he's not going to change it for Chile and be like, oh yeah, by the way, you need to take all the power from the consumers and make it all. No. He would have been giving the same economic advice that he gave to China, that he gave to the U.S., and that he gave to Chile. It was all the same, and it's all about less government control over these areas. Let people be free to choose what they spend their time and money on. So that's less power centralized in the government. And he's being, oh, how dare you help Pinochet? I'm like, he's helping the people. He's not helping Pinochet. He's helping the citizens by taking power, by advocating less power in the government.
Yeah. Alrighty. So the link to the article about turning post offices into banks is in the group chat.
Yeah,
That's
kind of odd.
Yeah. Okay. So apparently it was actually not published a minute ago, but rather 3 hours ago. So
Yeah.
I guess I'll read a paragraph and then we can go over
Let
piece by
me.
piece, I guess.
Wait, did I close out my Twitter? Oh, there it is.
Okay.
So let me
Senator
make sure that it's
Kirsten
okay.
Gillibrand. If I butchered it, then it's probably my fault. A Democrat
That
of
name
New
sounds
York.
familiar. Yeah,
I
I'll have to
think there
look
was
up.
some. I don't
The
recognize. I mean, it
Gillibrand
sounds
does
very
sound
familiar.
familiar, so I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure she's advocated for stupid stuff in the past.
Probably.
And not just because there's a D next to her name, but I'm pretty sure that name sounds familiar, as in, oh, this moron again. Okay.
Yes. As proposing legislation aimed at putting an end to current payday lending practices by giving some banking services a new home, the United States Post Office.
But the United States Post Office is losing money. They don't have money to loan.
Yeah, and you know, haven't they haven't they messed like a lot of things up in the past with how to handle mail and I
Oh
mean,
yeah, no.
yeah,
The UPS is losing, or sorry, USPS is losing to their private sector counterparts hugely. I mean, that's the only thing that the regular post office has going for it is normal mail.
yeah,
All the rest of the mail, like yeah, FedEx and DHL and UPS are kicking their asses,
yeah, like
every way.
yeah, and if I were to privatize anything, I think the mail would be the first thing. I think that if a company can handle your like the things you order on the internet, like the headphones I got,
Hmm.
these that go over the head, you know, if they can handle that fine, then and if you think they're reliable to handle your normal mail, I think that's your choice to decide how your mail is delivered. Um, the legislation, which is called the Postal Banking Act, would make retail banking services available at all U.S.
Oh
postal
no.
services available in the. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm reading and no, and I'm seeing exactly. I was like, dude, this is the housing crisis all over again. You stupid idiot.
Yeah, that would make retail banking services available at all United States Postal Service
Dope.
locations. This
Oh.
this this amounts to 30,000 post offices nationwide. Now, fortunately, this is just proposed
Uh,
legislation that has not been.
yeah. If this
Uh,
goes through, this is the housing crisis times 1,000.
yeah, and
Holy moly, you idiots!
yeah,
It.
so I guess I'm glad I brought the article up to probably, hopefully, I guess, give it some attention. Services would include small dollar loans for consumers that offer low fees and low interest rates. Those transactions would compete with payday loans, a short-term advance that typically comes due with your next paycheck.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see her problem with payday loans. Oh wait, the terms for payday loans are often unfavorable, said Alex Horowitz, a senior research officer for the Consumer Finance Project at Pew Charitable Trust, an independent research organization. All right, so there's a stated
All
reason
right.
within the article, so that's at
Yeah.
least
So
something.
I'll try to explain why this is going to, if that passes through, why that's housing crisis 2.0. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main reasons behind the housing crisis was they're like, oh, look at all these low income families, or look at all these people with bad credit that aren't getting home loans. And well, they didn't see them as low income or bad credit individuals. They saw them as, oh, look at all these black people who aren't getting home loans. Look at all these minorities that aren't getting home loans. Even though the numbers at the time were actually showing that the individuals most likely to get a home loan were actually black single moms.
Mm-hmm.
But banking system is racist, so they passed policies forcing banks to give loans to everyone. So anybody who applies for a loan has to get a home loan. This was something that they were mandated by federal law to do. And so it's kind of what they're doing right now. They're saying, oh, these lending practices are unfair. We need to go in and make our own lending practices and force it to be fair. So it's forcing the housing market to be fair. Fair according to them, not according to the people who actually run it. And so the banks are like, these people don't have very good credit. That's why they were denied home loans to begin with. They're low income earners, so they can't repay their loans, and we have no way of making money off of this. So instead, what they decided to do was, okay, we can give them low interest up front or introductory offers, and then that interest will start to increase over time. That's
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that the adjustable rate mortgages, that was the only way the banks could see where they could give out this loan and still make it profitable for the bank.
Yeah.
Thing is, once that interest rate started to go up, the low income families, they're still low income. They're not. And so there's two factors in this. One, the banks are charging way more than these people probably could have paid, even if they had, even if they had devoted all of their time and money into paying off the loan.
Yeah.
Second factor is a lot of these people in these economic situations are bad with finances to begin with. So they got their cheap home loan and they're like, oh, hey, low introductory rate. Sure, they know about it that day. They forget about it in a couple of weeks, and then they're like, oh, well, I've got all this extra money in my that I'm not using, all this extra money that I'm getting from my paycheck that's not going towards anything right now. I'm also going to buy a new car, and I'm going to buy a new TV. Because once you get a home loan, you can actually use that as leverage for other types of loans. So these people would get a home loan with an adjustable rate mortgage, and then they would start to buy TVs, big screen TVs, and expensive things. So once that adjustable rate on their mortgage went up, well, now they've got too many bills. They've got all their excess cash is already going to places. They don't have anything set aside for when that adjustable rate goes up. So there's no way they can pay off their adjustable rate. They stop paying on that adjustable rate mortgage, and the mortgage goes into foreclosure. And this starts a chain reaction of mortgages going into foreclosure, banks having less money to lend out to other more profitable investments, like businesses or things that actually have good credit. Well, because that bank is tapped out, they're like, well, all of our credit is out on these home loans, and these home loans are starting to default. So now we can't give out money to banks to businesses and other home loans that would have been successful, which leads to, oh, those businesses that are relying on bank loans to keep going, they now can't get the bank loans, and so they start laying people off, and it starts this whole chain reaction. It's like, okay, now the people who are getting laid off are starting to default on their home loans, and it's this huge self-cycling loop. And it wouldn't have happened, at least not to that extreme, had banks just kept their current lending practices, where they're lending to people that are more than likely going to be able to keep making their home loan or making their mortgage payments.
Yeah, and yeah,
so
that's
yeah, okay. So we'll tie it back to the payday loan thing.
Yeah.
I'll let you finish your thought.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also a reason to why I think people should live within their means.
Yes.
Like I've seen people who they own an Escalade, but they work at like Savers or something.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about TVs and other fancy, very expensive things that people don't need, which if the economy is booming and you have enough money set aside to pay for that and be secure, and you're like, you know what, I want a new TV, and you get a new TV, that's fine. But a lot of people, the problem is, and this is how some people get into debt, is they don't plan for the future. Like, this is a big thing I've noticed with people, is they don't plan for the future. They're just like, I can have all this stuff now. I don't have to worry about the inevitable future, and they just collapse, and the ground they hit, which is the debt and financial problems, is a very unforgiving wall. And
because most people live paycheck to paycheck. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's well over 50% of American citizens live paycheck to paycheck. That means every cent that they make is going out, and a lot of them do not have emergency funds. So when things go bad, when they lose their job, when things go up in price, like it's just something that we're experiencing right now, which is not being reported on inflation rates. Groceries, the price of groceries has gone up exponentially in the last, 10 years or so. It's ridiculous. Like, the price of milk has more than doubled in the last 10 years. Yeah, and it's one of those things that people don't notice, and you're like, the price of milk has doubled. that's a for a family, that's a huge increase in their regular grocery bills, and that's just one item. Eggs have gone up, price of bread has gone up, the price of gasoline has gone up. Not to the extreme that it was in during the housing crisis, but
Yeah.
compared to where it was, I think well, this was back in like 2005. I think the price of gasoline is doubled from then. Like it skyrocketed during the housing bubble and during the oil crisis type thing. Because I remember prices being like $7 a gallon or something like that. But now it's typical for gasoline prices to be $2 to $3 a gallon, and I'm like, it used to be less than $1.50 per gallon. Not even 10 years
Yeah, I
ago.
remember.
Yeah, or
Yeah, I
10 to 12 years
remember.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it because I remember back in 2014 and 15, they were saying the gas prices were going down quite a bit
Yeah.
when it
So
was
so
reported
they went
that.
up huge and came back down, but still not quite to where they started off. So they're
Yeah,
still, and now people are like, oh, look, phew, gas prices are so cheap now, and I'm like, they used to be cheaper. They used to
yeah,
be, they used to be more reasonable than they are now, and so you saw that extreme, and now you forget, oh, they're still twice as high as they were before.
yeah. And to be fair to them, they don't know any different. So, if you Google gas prices decrease 2014, I think this is when I first started to notice. They said there's from Investopedia and Bankrate.com talking about um, Uh, four reasons they say gas prices will keep dropping. It's from 2016. Then CNN reported a few years ago 89 straight days of lower gas prices.
Yeah.
And it's been something that they it was first reported on in 2013, but it was close to 2014. So
Yeah. But
yeah, I
if
will
you
say
think
that
about it, 10 years ago, if the gas prices was half of what it is now, that means those families, they're spending their budget, right? Their extra cash is limited by twice of what their gas budget. I mean, you're not going to get it's hard to work if you don't have your own car, if you're not paying for your own gas. Hard to go on trips, hard to go to grocery store and all those sorts of things. That
yeah,
gas is part of your monthly expenses, and it's twice of what it used to be. That's and inflation is 4%, right? Or supposedly 3 to 4%, or maybe they say it's 2 to 3%. 10 years,
yeah,
that should be a at most a 20% increase, or at most a 40% increase. But it's more than it's more than doubled, and you're like, wait, how is inflation still 2 to 3% or 2 to 4%?
yeah, and
That doesn't
yeah,
their inflation number is off. So it's more expensive to live being a low income earner than it used to be. That
yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
yeah, yeah, and this article, yeah, and with inflation, I've seen people make a lot of pretty common arguments you hear talking about inflation, like under certain periods of the United States where oh this president did great to cut deficits in half or to handle inflation, um like uh in the 90s there was a recession like
mm-hmm.
and people have credited George H.W. Bush for having the economy go into a recession, but credit Bill Clinton for putting us into a surplus, they say, and they would also credit him for helping end the recession. And then they blame George W. Bush for maybe not necessarily blame, but they would say he was asleep at the wheel, and maybe you could say he was for when the housing market crashed
I wouldn't
and when
say he
the
was asleep at
economy
the wheel. He was probably on cocaine at the wheel.
and
No.
saying that Obama, uh, a lot of people I've seen argue, even I think even a few Republicans would concede. They'd say, oh yeah, that Obama did fine with the economy. That while the recession's over, and some people even on the left argue that income inequality has worsened, but at least the
Yeah.
economy had some stability. I would say, and there's a lot of common arguments,
Well,
and usually very few like connections. Like how do you correlate like someone being the president and the causation? How do you get that to be the causation of what you say they did or didn't do?
okay, so the income inequality argument doesn't make any sense to anybody who studies economics. You're like, wait, that has to happen.
Yeah,
It's inevitable. You can't get away from that. So the income inequality issue is always it's always numbers. Well, it depends on how you're looking at the data, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, the top 1% own this much of the, own more than the other 50% combined. So what this means, and Crowder does Stephen Crowder does a really good explanation of this, and he's not the one who created this. This is actually from other economists, but this is the example that I'm going to use because it's the one that's more fresh in my mind. Okay, so would you rather have 50% of $1 million or 10% of $1 billion? At least I think that's right. Is that my math correct there? I think those are the numbers he used. Because it's so 50% of $1 million is $500,000. That's 500,000.
Yeah.
10% of $1 billion is $1 million, right? Yeah. No, 100 million. Yeah, 10%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, 10% of $1 billion is 100 million. Yeah, I'd take that.
We know our math.
But
we know our math.
Okay, but look at the income inequality. So you got 50% of $1 million, right? That's 500,000, and then that means the other guy got 500,000. If you got 10% of $1 billion, right? That means you got 100 million, but the other guy got 900 million. Yeah. Oh no, that's huge income inequality. He's got 9 times what I have, whereas the first time he had the same amount as me. And you're like, who cares? You have 5 million. You've got you've got 200 times what you had in the previous scenario. So it doesn't matter that the other guy gets 9 times what you have currently. You have 200 times what you had in the other figure.
Yeah.
So it's the idea that the larger the pie grows, yes, your percentage of that pie is smaller. So this is more related to what Crowder's actually saying. It's like, yes, would you rather have a smaller portion of a larger pie or a large portion of a really small pie? That's the idea being expressed here, and I'd rather have a smaller portion of a much larger pie because it's more for me overall. But if I'm looking at, we need income equality, and we need to get rid of this, income disparity, well, if everybody can have an equal portion of a really crappy pie, or everybody can have a small portion of a really large pie, or disproportionate portions of a much larger pie. Now, the idea that we can get a much larger pie while maintaining equal portions doesn't make any sense, considering when you add Pareto distributions to it. The more money you have, the more money you're likely to get. It's that's and the Pareto distribution is actually more accurately described as the square root of the number of individuals in a particular industry do 50% of the work in that industry.
Yeah.
So
hey,
or produce 50% of the results in that industry.
Okay. Yeah.
So so because they're producing half, and it's the square root, so it's exponentially a smaller group depending on how large this group gets that does half of the work in it, which means half of the stuff is being filtered to a smaller proportion of people the larger that industry becomes.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of unavoidable, but again, you're talking about, well, because they're doing 50% of the work and that industry is growing, the number of people at the top that are doing most of the work is shrinking. That's why you get a larger pie, but a smaller portion in that pie. And it's kind of unavoidable.
And Loudmouth, you can go ahead and brag now.
Okay. Did I ever talk about how fucking awesome I am because I have 2,000 subs?
Oh man. Well, how are you going to eat them all? Because they're just going to start to rot before you can get even through half of that.
Yeah. Yeah. The reason why I have 2,000 subs...
I didn't make that joke. Just scratch that from the record.
Yes. Okay. The reason why I have 2,000 subs, guys, is because...
Huge penis, right?
You have to accept the fundamental fact that I am better than either of you. Well, I have to accept, bro. Yes, that's what I'm gonna say. You guys didn't go to
you're
college
at least 10 times better than I am,
bro.
You're at least 20 times better than I am. So
Yes.
all
Exactly.
down. We're not worthy. We're not worthy.
You are not worthy of my continued presence in all of your streams, but I will still grace it to you peasants anyway because of how benevolent and.
So we're just asking for subscriber scraps from your the rejects, the people that you didn't want subscriptions from. We'll take them gladly.
Oh yes. But seriously, it's pretty cool.
No, that's pretty awesome, man.
My video on Idiocracy, for some reason, about a week ago, it started to surge in views, just kind of randomly, even though the video's like a year and a half old. All right, well, and I've gained
because the movie is prophetic, and people are like, this is real life right now.
Yes, exactly. And so I've like gained something like 350 subs in the last week.
Man, see? That's 3 times what I have in total, and you got those in 1 week. Yeah, good job, man.
That is congratulations, Loudmouth.
It had nothing to do with my recent Gargoyles video. Yeah. That one's only gotten like 200 views.
Dude, Gargoyles, like best show ever.
I'm glad you're a fan of Gargoyles, because it really was one of those underappreciated shows ever made.
And I mean, it's what got me into a whole bunch of mythology and looking into and it got me interested in Shakespeare, which is
that's actually was Greg Wiseman's intent when he created it. It added all those Shakespeare references to encourage kids to read.
I mean, because before that, all I'd heard is Romeo and Juliet, and I'm like, oh, dude, this play is so bad.
Yeah,
I mean, it
will seem but a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah, Midsummer Night's Dream is my favorite Shakespeare play. That's hands down. I mean, Macbeth is really good as well, but so I guess I can't say Romeo and Juliet is bad. Like the prose in that, it's very, very quotable, but the overall story arc is just like, the overall story arc is, oh, come on, really? This is the greatest love story. It's 2 teens who want to bang. That's not love.
2 teens who want to bang, yes. And that has happened so many times throughout history, okay? 2 teens want to bang, and it ends in tragedy. Don't put the pussy on the pedestal. All right? That's what Shakespeare was trying to warn us all about.
Yeah.
People like, oh, it's so romantic. And I'm like, no, you're...
That's actually a pretty horrible story, actually.
Yeah.
No, there's so many more, like, he's got a lot more stories where it's like, okay, that is romance. Everybody's like Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, no, that's a warning. Don't do that.
Here's how to sum up Romeo and Juliet: 2 teenagers that are having the hormone surge unrestricted, cause a bloodbath. One kills themselves because they think the other one's dead. Then the other one sees that the one who killed themselves is dead. Then they kill themselves. The end.
That's so
sum it up in less than 30 seconds.
No, had their plan worked out and had they actually escaped and gotten away from their families, 1.5 years tops, they'd been like, okay, we're out. We're done. Back. Like, no. They're like, kids and a mortgage and bills? Nah, screw this. I'm going back.
But Loudmouth, I don't know how much of the stream you heard. I don't know if you heard me and HUMANE talk about the Postal Banking Act.
Okay. No, not really. I kind of came in late because I wanted to brag.
But apparently they want to end current payday lending practices by giving some banking services a new home, which is the United States Postal Offices.
Yeah. So this is I'm tying the housing market back to that. It's going to be the same thing. So the reason payday loans have like crazy high fees and terrible interest rates is because that's the only way they can make money. These are iffy at best loans. Often you can get one of these loans with just a signature, right? Signature loan, or maybe the title of your car. There's not much collateral, and there's not much way that these payday loan lenders can ensure that they're actually going to make their money back. So they charge really high fees. So that way, as long as they get a couple of payments, they can still at least like, oh, hey, we made our money. It's to make sure that they can definitely get their loans. So these are lenders of last resort. If these people in these situations could go to a regular bank and get reasonable interest rates and nice terms on their loans, they would have done that instead of going to a payday loan. The reason they have to go to a payday loan is because they've got bad credit and they've got low income and they're in general bad at financing.
Yeah, and the Yeah, the article also goes on that I linked in the group chat. It says about 12 million people use payday loans annually, according to Horowitz. The average loan is $375 for a period of 5 months, which accrues about $520 in fees.
Yes.
Those loans are extraordinarily expensive, with annual percentage rates around near 400%, Horowitz has said. And then there's some tweets in the article from the senator in question who is proposing this legislation. And she makes quite a claim in this one tweet. She says, payday lending traps compound the financial struggles of many hardworking people who are struggling to get by. It makes it expensive to be poor. A simple short-term $50 loan to pay a utility bill or repair a car could end up costing 400% more to repay in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's terrible, but what she's proposing to fix that is going to make things worse.
Yeah.
Because now they're going to be offering loans to people, and look at the percentages of how many payday loans are not ever paid back.
A lot.
It's ridiculously high. That's why the terms are bad.
Yeah.
And yet they want to do that with the post office or through the post office for whatever reason. If they give them, if they end up doing reasonable terms and low fees, and they're going to get the same default rate as what payday loans are, they're going to be losing money hand over fist. And it's not going to impact them because it's run through the post office, which the post office is already losing money hand over fist. The
post office is always losing money from what I hear.
They would declare bankruptcy if tax money wasn't being funneled into them. And that's exactly what's going to happen if this goes through, is they're going to subsidize it with taxpayer dollars. Which means taxpayers are financing bad loans.
Yeah. Hey, you know that...
so
in the past, I've gained another 10 subscribers in the last 20 minutes.
Lucky bastard. But yeah.
Hey, so are they're watching the stream? Week. Hey, all of you subscribers that just signed on to Loudmouth, there's these other 2 channels that you also should check out. They're really good.
They are really good.
And Loudmouth shows up there every once in a while.
Oh, of course I do. And I'm the star, as we all know.
Yes. Yes, at the end of this video, I'll try and... Yeah.
But on top of that, guys, I've also managed to lose 10 pounds in the last 3 weeks, and I got a pay raise at work, so things have been going a bit better.
All right, that's good news all around, man.
That's fantastic. So yeah, the link for those, I think I'll post the link in the description to the article I have sent to the Twitter chat. But yeah, it's about this whole
it's always with the unintended consequences. It's a nice idea, right? But you don't think about this is what's going to happen. It's not thought through. You're like, I want to help these people. I want to give them better. Like, if you could do that without the UPS, right, the U.S. Postal Service, somebody would already be doing that. If some company could do that, what they're proposing, without being subsidized, a company would exist to do that.
Yeah.
So some new company, some new lender would come out. They would give them the better rates of return, the better interest rates and more reasonable terms on their loans, and they would be making money hand over fist because everybody would start going to them instead of to these predatory lenders.
Yeah.
It's that company doesn't exist because that company would go out of business.
Yeah, and fortunately, this is only legislation that is proposed. It's not. I don't think it's been considered by the House, by the Senate or the House of Representatives. And besides, it sounds like something the president would veto anyway.
All right, and so I'm gonna link that in the chat here. I should have linked that when you posted it in the Twitter, but oh well. Okay.
So I put it in the description, and I'm also going to put it in the chat for those who might want to take a read of my live chat. So, also, don't forget that I recently just Patreoned to you, Loudmouth. Speaking of good news. So now you have a new Patreon. All right. So, someone wants to join, someone who... Trainer McCurry. All right, let me get your Twitter, and I'll follow and hopefully I spell this right, because I accidentally tagged an Indian dude in a tweet once, and thinking with someone else, which that was an embarrassment. All right, got the correct Twitter this time.
Yeah, Zach, thanks for the Patreon. I appreciate that. I mean to message him about that, but I've been busy as fuck.
All right, and to Trainer McCurry, let me just get the link, and you can join us. But it's good to hear that things have been on the up for you, Loudmouth.
Generally, it's good. I don't know. I've definitely been managing my stress a lot better when things go well.
That is
Yeah,
good.
it's a lot easier to be happy when things are going well, right? That's the
Yeah.
so.
And
But you just got to get used to the okay. What do I do when things are going bad? And so this is something we were talking about with these predatory loan types of situations. A lot of people who are in them, the reason they get in them in the first place is poor planning for the future.
Hi, Trainer. Trainer Mercury. Have I ever talked to you before?
No.
Okay. How are you?
So
I'm hanging in there. Been sick since last Thursday.
That sucks. Hope you get better.
So I'm wondering what you're training for, or training other hamsters for. Are you training them for what's going to happen when they get declawed and have their teeth removed, or wait, no, shaved and declawed?
Pokemon reference.
I don't watch Pokemon because I'm uncultured swine.
Oh. So not a Lemmiwinks reference.
I did a few times before I turned 10.
Oh, Loudmouth.
Yes.
I'm also a kid of the 90s.
Ah, nice. As was I.
Gargoyles, king of all Disney shows.
I'm glad you agree, because I have all scripted out reviews of all of the episodes of the Goliath Chronicles, and over the next few weeks, I will be reviewing all 12 of the post-Wiseman Goliath Chronicles episodes.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm glad that you're doing it, but it's kind of like because of what these could have been. It's all that potential squander. I have not. I didn't even know about them. So thanks for cluing me into that.
Unfortunately, they're out of print, so they're very hard to find.
Oh.
But yes, in 2006, Greg Wiseman, he only managed to publish 6 issues before it was canceled. But he published 12 issues of a comic book series that continued Gargoyles after Hunter's Moon, but ignored the Goliath Chronicles entirely.
Okay.
And
so that was kind of like this is what I wish would have happened with the series. Yeah.
That's basically what it was, okay? And a lot of things are done a lot differently. You find out, let's see, Thalog joins the Illuminati. Brooklyn, all right, has a really interesting arc. He finds the Phoenix Gate, okay? He vanishes, all right, in it, and then he pops back in 5 minutes later, 40 years older, with a wife, a son, an unhatched egg, and a new gargoyle beast, okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
Favorite character?
Ooh, that's a tough. I'd probably say Xanatos, because is there anyone more fucking alpha than David Xanatos? I mean, everything about that guy exuded ultra coolness.
Yeah. Actually, Loudmouth, I do have the answer to your question. It's a certain somebody on here who is a total alpha red-pilled motherfucker.
Yes, yes, everyone. Yes, who's more alpha than David Xanatos, other than Brooks Heatherling, and we all bow before his ultra sexy body.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say this now, Loudmouth, but I'm sorry. There's one outbeats David Xanatos hands down. Sorry.
Huh.
Odin.
No,
but he's only in one episode, and he didn't.
Still,
favorite character of the series, Puck. He's
Puck God.
Yeah.
And
that annoying half-wit.
Yeah.
Demona was an awesome character too.
No, he's a trickster, not a half-wit. Well, just okay. So he is the servant of Oberon, but in the episode where Oberon
he's the servant of David Xanatos.
Yeah, but so when in the episode where Oberon is coming to get his grandchild from them, And Puck is just beating the crap out of him while he's explaining the story because he's abusing the situation. He's like, he knows that Oberon is wounded and is trying to get through, and he's like, does everything he can to milk the situation. I was like, dude, that's fucking badass. And Oberon just kind of like, okay, he just gets through it and then ignores Puck and like, dude, really?
And
well, I guess Puck does slightly suffer some punishment based on that, but
he does punish him at the end of the episode. He strips him of his power, banishes him from Avalon.
Yeah.
It was just the gathering was supposed to last 200 years. Well, 8 Avalonian years, 200 years on Earth.
Yeah.
There's only one item I want.
Huh? What's that?
Item?
Titania's mirror.
Titania's mirror.
The reason is, walk through that mirror, show up at my worst enemy's house, tap them on the shoulder, leave out the mirror before they even know it.
Oh yeah, that would drive any motherfucker crazy.
Oh yeah, because you could do that anytime you wanted. Just like, and they're like, yeah.
Or
just do that
you
repeatedly.
could always give me the Eye of Odin.
It was another cool thing the comics did. It also King Arthur, Coldstone all appear in it. All characters, the Goliath Chronicles, totally ignored.
Yeah.
Where's Coldstone in that whole thing? Where was King Arthur? They were all right. They didn't do anything with those guys.
No, and there's so many situations where even like the minor villains could have come back in, and it's just generic henchmen everywhere. And I'm like, generic henchmen in season 2, generic henchmen were the pack
characters.
They were named characters that were actually okay. I can see them being a viable threat, and it wasn't just like cannon fodder. You know, they weren't stormtroopers. They were.
Well, yeah, I point out that in later reviews about how ridiculously badly done the Quarrymen were in later episodes. How they can't seem to shoot worth a shit. They seem all right. I make a lot of jokes in the reviews. Yeah, well, don't worry. This is the Goliath Chronicles. Bullets don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean they had incompetent troops like season 1, right? They're invading these fortresses, and they're incompetent. But now over time, those people learn and they get better security. They hire, mercenaries with experience with the gargoyles. These got what were they called again? The
Quarrymen.
The Quarrymen? No, they're just like, we'll just do more of the same. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Well, the biggest problem was the fact that it totally butchered the leader of the Quarrymen, who was supposed to be Castaway was supposed to be John Canmore in disguise, a new alias he took. All right, I don't think the Goliath Chronicles ever made it clear that Castaway was John Canmore from the finale of season 2, even though that's who he was supposed to be. The comics make that 100% clear that Castaway is John Canmore. And another big thing is you see him telling them. He tells the Quarrymen to go to this public party. He thinks the gargoyles might show up. Then he tells them to leave their hammers behind. He says, you don't want to intimidate the public. I'm like, thank you, because the Quarrymen in the Goliath Chronicles are fucking lunatics who like spray bullets and spray bombs all over the city, and no one cares.
Yeah, and everybody's like, yep, those are the good guys. What?
Here's an idea. Give me a combination of 3 things, and I'll be happy.
What?
Phoenix Gate, the Eye of Odin, and the Grinorum.
Yeah. That's all the things the Archmage has.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: why has there not been, with all the old cartoons that have been adapted into movies?
Most of them are getting reboots. Why aren't gargoyles?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Wouldn't a Gargoyles movie be fucking awesome?
Yes,
I imagine
it would.
the Gargoyles could be done with motion capture, computer animation, kind of like the apes from Dawn.
Yeah,
the new Planet
I was gonna say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but yeah, Planet of the Apes would be much better.
Hear this, guys. I predicted a live-action movie in 2019.
And if you do it that way, I would still have Keith David do the voice of Goliath. I don't think anybody else could.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Kind of similar to how the Transformers movies. The only good thing Michael Bay ever did with those fucking movies,
the original voice actors.
Was get the original voice actor for Optimus Prime. All right. That was the only good thing he ever fucking did. Everything else he fucking screwed up, but he did that one thing right.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
Loudmouth, you have 2,001 subscribers now.
Nice. Yeah. So
actually, I have two. Let me see. Hold on.
I just subbed.
So I am not a fan of the Transformers
2013
series. I did enjoy the first Transformers though. Ever since 2, I have hate. I'm like, oh, first one. I'm a big fanboy of Transformers as well, so that was like, yes, we get a Transformers movie. It's not great, but it's
the first one. It's the best of them that he did. It's still not a good movie. It's still a very flawed movie.
Yeah, it's got a horrible, like, the cheesy nonsense. It's like, oh, there's only one hacker in the world who could do, and no, that whole. But I accept it because it's got that nostalgia factor for me. There was a phenomenal joke Robot Chicken did making fun of those movies where it has Optimus Prime giving Sam the cube, the Allspark, and he says, "Careful, Sam, if Megatron gets the Allspark, he will rule the entire universe." Or
there's a question.
Or it just might kill him by
or it might kill him and then possibly raise him from the dead. Oh, frankly, Sam, I don't know what the fucking Allspark does.
Zach asks to Loudmouth, what did you think of Hugo Weaving voicing Megatron?
I didn't notice.
I thought he did a decent job. That Megatron was not a character in that movie. He had no character development whatsoever. Yeah. But Hugo Weaving's voice did seem to fit.
Yeah, it seemed to fit. I didn't notice that wasn't the original voice actor. I thought they had both voice actors. So
no, it wasn't the original voice actor.
Yeah, it was not, though. He did a very good impersonation of the original Megatron, though. So
no complaints there.
And luckily, Starscream did not get a voice. Because he was the most annoying character on that TV show. All right,
what I love about Starscream in the original show is he constantly double crosses Megatron every fucking time he gets the chance, and Megatron doesn't just kill him. Why the fuck do you keep someone around who tries to betray you every fucking time he gets the chance?
I don't know.
Out of all characters out of Gargoyles, I give sympathy to one and one alone.
Huh?
Sympathy?
Macbeth.
Oh, yeah. No, Macbeth, hugely sympathetic character, and you're like,
he should have been a lot of sympathy for all the shit he's went through.
Yeah, by the time the comics roll around, he's essentially teamed up an ally with the Gargoyles. Like the first issue that deviates, issue 3 that deviates from the Goliath Chronicles, is kind of Macbeth showing up and asking a couple of the Gargoyles to join him on a mission to Britain, where they meet up with King Arthur. So it's pretty cool. They meet other members of the Manhattan clan.
Arthur Pendragon.
Okay, so this is kind of steered away from the topic of this this stream, and I do have to go because I do. Oh, I mean, I do have a time limit. I've got people coming to look at the house.
Sorry, Darth Conservatarian. Leonard Nimoy was not the original voice of Megatron. That is incorrect. The Dark Conservatarian in the chat says Leonard Nimoy is the original voice of Megatron. That is not correct.
No, he was the voice of somebody in the movie though.
Yeah, he was the voice of Sentinel Prime in the third movie.
Yeah, Sentinel. No. He was the voice of a character in the cartoon movie. Transformers the movie, the 80s
he was
soundtrack.
The voice of, what was it?
Unicron was the voice of Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, yeah. And that was his last role before he died, was as Unicron.
Yeah, Orson Welles as Unicron. Leonard Nimoy played somebody, though.
Darn it.
Did he play Galvatron? No.
Yeah, he was Galvatron. That's who it was.
Yes. Okay, yeah.
Leonard Nimoy was the voice of Galvatron.
Yes.
But he was not Megatron, though. He was not the original Megatron.
Was it Judd Nelson was the voice of Hot Rod? I mean, I like Judd Nelson, but that Hot Rod whole story arc was just.
And I like how Starscream throws Megatron right out of the ship. I'm like, yeah, you couldn't have predicted this 1,000 fucking times, Megatron. That Starscream would betray you, even though he's done it 50 fucking times.
Yeah. One of my favorite episodes, or I guess maybe this was more than one. I think this was a mini story arc. Was when Megatron finally kicks Starscream out, and Starscream goes and builds his own squad, and he gets like some World War II era like tanks and jeeps and stuff, and makes his own not Constructicon, his own what did they actually call them? You know, the robots. It's like 5 combined, right?
Devastator.
Yeah, he makes Devastator, but I forget what do they call them when robots form into a bigger robot. Is there a name for that?
I haven't watched that cartoon in a while.
Yeah. Yeah, but he makes his own, and yeah, I was like, oh, that was one of my favorite, because it was, yeah, Devastator was awesome.
Now let's all listen to S-Man. He needs to speak.
Okay.
What? I wouldn't even say anything. I'm just
But
looking at...
I would like to get this back on track, but yeah, this is 80s nostalgia and 80s and 90s nostalgia stuff. So.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. But holy shit, the guy in the article looks a lot like Terry Crews. That's like unnerving. But anyway,
Yeah.
But
either that or you're racist.
Terry Crews, yes, he's going to be the president. He's President Camacho, remember?
Yeah, President Camacho.
He's going to fix the economy. He's so smart. He's going to do it all in 1 week. I love that movie. And now that movie's making me money because my review of it is going haywire and generating me lots of cash. So I love that movie more now.
Money.
Wait, you like money and sex too?
Great fucking movie. Yes.
wow. So I'm looking at the comment section of your video or collab loudmouth, and finally the comment popped up where he's calling you a homo, and I'll have to reply to it, you know, but there's like a few other comments where like one of them's calling you a Nazi or something, or it mentions you shutting down free speech. It's fucking funny.
I think it's because I blocked his ass on Twitter because he was spurging out on me a few times. It was over the Dankula thing. When he says I supported a Nazi, it's because I supported Count Dankula's right to free speech. So I think that's what the guy's talking about. And I blocked him because he was fucking
Nazi.
Yes, I know. I blocked him because he was fucking annoying, and I'm sorry. I do block people.
Yeah,
that piss me off.
That is not condemning his free speech or blocking his. That just means you are ignoring him.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing.
That doesn't stop his ability to talk to anybody else. It just means okay, I don't want to listen to you. Yeah,
because he was a fucking annoying, spurging asshole.
Yeah, free speech does not mean that I have to listen to you. That just means I can't silence you. I can't stop you from speaking your mind. I can ignore you all I fucking want.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah. All right, getting back to the topic of banking though. So before I do log off, because I do have to go in a 20 minutes or so here. I wanted to talk about fractional reserve banking, because this seems to be, because I know JPM and a couple other people have brought this issue up, and because they're talking about how we haven't had a bank run since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, and I'm like, that's to my mind that was the worst thing we could have done, and that expands the problem. The problem is the root that bank runs can happen in the first place. And that's what I was trying to point out in that discussion, so I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on that outside of the Twitter group and actually on this stream. So if you think about what causes a bank run, a bank says, you deposit your money in a bank. So say you deposit $100. The bank takes that $100 and lends it out to Loudmouth, right? So S-Man deposited $100, Loudmouth gets a loan of $100. The bank says, okay, at any time, S-Man, you can go and take your $100 out. And like, how is that not? That outright there is fraud, or at least it should be, because they don't have your $100. They gave that $100 to Loudmouth. Humanism is another. Wait, what did I miss?
Humanism, like I'm making up political ideology names like loudmouthism, humanism.
Okay.
Zaconomics, but anyway, yeah.
I don't want to know mine.
So
Mercuryism.
So when you think about, these are terrible lending practices because you're double promising the same money. That's the same thing as, this is an issue that Bitcoin has helped sort of resolve, is the double spending of money. Is I can't give you money and then promise, or I can't give S-Man money and then promise Loudmouth money, that same money. I can only spend that one coin with one of you. It's a system that prevents double spending, and that's a double check. It's like, oh, you spent this Bitcoin, you already gave it to this person, And if you try to double spend it, the system is going to crack down and be like, nope, that transaction never happened, and ignore it. But with banking, or at least with with fractional reserve banking, it's not just a part of the system or something that can happen. It's the entire purpose of the system is to double spend money. S-Man gave me $100. I'm going to give Loudmouth $100. Loudmouth is going to give me back that $100 with interest, and I'm going to keep promising S-Man that he has his full 100 even when he doesn't. So if S-Man comes in and says, hey, I want my full $100 back, I can't do that because right now Loudmouth has it. That is an outright lie, and that's what starts the bank runs. Is they've promised two different people access to the same money at the same time. When
Our
that
economy's
happens,
just fucked up as is.
yeah, that's going to lead to a screwed up economy. And their solution to this was to allow banks to do the exact same. Banks to go to a Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve does the exact same thing. The Federal Reserve says, okay, I'll give you money, and I will give you that $100, and I'll give you that same $100. That's the Federal Reserve just takes that fractional reserve lending and takes it to another tier. So now you've got individuals, or banks double promising individuals, and then the Federal Reserve double promising banks. And that's fixed the problem. How does that makes the problem worse? That expands it to another tier, which means if banks ever try to do a bank run on the Federal Reserve can't cover all of that, and they would have the same problem. It's just it's a bit of a collusion between banks and the Federal Reserve. There's the understanding that, we know how the system works. We know that even though you're telling us we've got full access to our money that's in you, that we don't actually have it, so we're never actually going to go and try to withdraw our full amount. It's a
huge contradiction.
Yes. But if you look at most credit unions do not operate the same way that banks work. Most credit unions, I don't know if this is every credit union, but I do know there are credit unions that exist that do this. And if there aren't, then because most credit unions are not backed by the Federal Reserve, they are not members of FDIC. Right? Because that's the FDIC means, well, there's two portions of that. That means if the bank is ever low on funds, they will borrow from the Federal Reserve to pay their customers. It also means if the bank is ever robbed, they're insured through the Federal Reserve. Most credit unions are not a part of the FDIC, and I think most of them can't be a part of it. But what a lot of federal credit unions do is they do it the right way. They have a separated savings and investment account. And so all of the money that you deposit into your savings stays in your savings and never leaves the bank. That money stays in their vault where it's supposed to be, and they charge you a percentage to keep your money in their vault. That's how it's supposed to be. The money that you put into your investments, well, that you don't have access to that money. You invest like $1,000 into your credit union. Your credit union takes that $1,000, loans it out, and what they will do is they will deposit the income from that investment into your account, which you can then withdraw, or you can reinvest into that. So when your invested amount is not liquid, but your savings and checking are liquid. That's what's supposed to happen. But banking, they don't separate those accounts, and they keep them all in one. So, and I haven't really addressed what fractional reserve lending is and how it allows banks to double spend currency. So what fractional reserve lending is I only have to keep a portion of your amount in there. Right now, it's about 10%. So you give me $1,000, I have to keep 100 in my bank. But this does create the situation where I end up double spending the money, and this is basically how it works out. So I get my original 1,000, right, from you. I keep 100 in the vault. I loan out 900 of it. I tell S-Man he can withdraw that 1,000 at any time. That's okay. That right there, in my mind, is fraud and should be fraud. But for some reason, no one else really considers it fraud except for Austrian economists and maybe a few in the Chicago School of Economics. That $900, is loaned out to someone, and well, that person can take that $900, and what do? Put it in a bank. Well, that means that bank now has $900, and they can loan out 810 of that and keep 90. And it's the same initial deposit that keeps getting circulated around like this. So it doesn't matter. So let's say S-Man puts $1,000 in the bank. That bank takes $900, gives me a $900 loan. I take that $900 loan. I pay my mortgage using that $900 loan. That $900 goes back in the bank. That $900, then the bank lends out 810 of it and keeps 90. So that 810, let's say Loudmouth got as part of his loan, and he takes that 810 and he buys groceries or whatever, ends up back in the bank being loaned out. Through this process, eventually the entire amount that S-Man originally deposited is doubled, because it's 900 plus 810, or no, it's 100 plus 90 plus the amount that is actually kept as the reserve totals to 1,000, but there's more than 1,000 out there through loans. It's more than just a double spending of the currency. Over time, it is actually a tenfold. Well, it's based on the percentage, because 10% needs to stay in. So there is $1,000 of physical $1,000, but what's being loaned out is actually 10 times that amount. Now, if it was something like 20%, then the amount loaned out wouldn't actually be 10 times that. It would be 5 times that. If that fractional reserve lending was 90%, then you wouldn't see a 10 times that amount being lent out. You would actually only see, I think, 10%. 10%. So you would actually see 1/10 of that amount being lent out above what the original amount was. So I think that's how it worked. Or you might see double that amount, I think. Is if it's 90%, then I think you would see double the amount deposited. Actually, you would see that expand out into loans. So the fractional reserve lending of 10% is crazy, because that means there's 10% of physical dollars in banks, and there is 10 times that amount out in the form of loans. This is not something that an individual could ever do. Because imagine if we weren't talking about a bank, and I was to do this. So let's say S-Man took $1,000, deposited it with me. I say, you can claim your $1,000 at any time. I take 900 of that, I lend that out to Loudmouth, right? Well, Loudmouth can use that, spend it wherever he wants. If that $900 ends up coming back to me, I'm going to look at my bank, and I'm going to see, okay, I only have $100. I owe S-Man $1,000, so I need to make 900 back so I can give S-Man his full amount, right? That's going to happen over time. But if it comes to the situation where somebody else starts depositing with me, it's like, oh, crap, I can't lend out any more money, because now I'm going to owe way more than I actually have to spend, and this is essentially what caused bank runs. I couldn't do this as a private individual. This would be fraud of the extreme, and you could definitely take my ass to court, sue the crap out of me, probably get my house out of the thing, or I don't know what. But as a private individual, I couldn't do the same thing that people are justifying banks doing every day. And this is one of the things that we're pointing, or the Austrian School of Economics is pointing out as one of the main reasons that we see these huge bubbles in our economy to begin with, is there's this practice of fractional reserve lending that is inflating the amount of money that's actually in the system. It makes it look like there's more money than there actually is, because there was only ever that original deposit of $1,000, and yet people are spending as if there is $10,000. And this isn't just one bank practicing this. This is every bank. All banks together colluding with each other to each do this. And then there's the Federal Reserve on top who's supporting all that and doing the exact same within its walls. And then you wonder why, how did all these people get loans for houses? And then so if somebody gave out a loan for a house and you defaulted on it, the bank shouldn't go bankrupt off of that. But yet they would, because that means they lost money on that deal, and there's no possible way for them to keep the promise that they've made to their customers. That right there should already spell out a huge problem. It's like, wait a minute. If you're telling your customers that they have access to their full $1,000 deposit, then that means you need to keep that full $1,000 and you can't spend it elsewhere. But you spent it elsewhere, and then you lost it, and now you still have this obligation to pay them back their $1,000. Had you done it more like the credit unions, where the credit unions do not guarantee that you will see a return on investment. If you put money in them to invest, they can show you what they're investing in, they can give you their projections and their estimates, but there's always the understanding that you could lose all of it because it is an investment. This is the same thing, like imagine if you had a guaranteed return on investment and in the stock market. And you put $1,000 in, and your stockbroker's like, well, you're definitely going to get your $1,000 back, and we're hoping that you're going to get more on top. No stock market runs like that, and yet that's how banks were operating when it comes to housing. They were saying, we're going to invest your money in housing, and you're definitely going to get all your money back. And I'm like, but then when housing starts collapsing, when loans start to be defaulted on, the banks have made that promise that how could you possibly keep that? Because when you're talking about investing, it is a gamble. It is always a gamble to invest. But what banks have been lying to people and telling them that it's a sure thing. And it can't possibly be a sure thing. Because every investment is a gamble. There's even the most sound business strategy, a business plan out there, the best business can and will fail. It's happened, like there are, massive multi-billion-dollar organizations that have shut down overnight, practically. There was a security. What was the name of that company?
Excuse me.
I can't remember the name off my head, top of my head. So this is part of one of the classes I was taking last semester. I was talking about this when it comes to security. It was a security firm that was multi-billion-dollar. I mean, I wish I could remember because they were around for about 20 years, and about 10 years ago, they completely collapsed. No one's ever heard of them since. They filed for bankruptcy. Multi-billion-dollar company, several locations, international. They were a security firm. And what this video was claiming was that Chinese hackers had actually infiltrated their system and were stealing all of their secrets and all of their security protocols, and then basically offering those same kind of security concepts, but without the R&D investment and without all the infrastructure investment. So they could offer it for much cheaper, and eventually this security group disappeared, and they were like top for that. I mean, it's. Maybe I should come up. Okay, here's a better example. Blockbuster, because this is at least I know the name of this one. I couldn't remember it. I want to say North Group, but that's not. It's something like Nelnet or something like that. Security. Sorry. Anyway, Blockbuster, right? King of video rentals, huge multi-billion-dollar company. Netflix comes along, Blockbuster's no more. If you had invested in Blockbuster stock,
what was it? That episode of South Park right before Blockbuster went out of business. It spoofed The Shining. It has Randy buying a Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And it ends up getting haunted, and he's like, oh, real funny. So Blockbuster Video is still out of date. It's haunted by ghosts.
Yeah. So had you invested in Blockbuster, sure, it seems like a really good deal at the time. Yeah, how could this possibly go wrong? It's making money hand over fist. But then the matter of, 5 years or so, Blockbuster's bankrupt and gone, and you...
Same way with Toys R Us and Amazon.
Oh, Toys R Us is bankrupt?
Oh, you didn't hear about
that?
that?
You didn't hear about that? Yeah.
No, that's a new one to me. I don't... I guess I don't go shopping for toys at Toys R Us, so maybe that's why I didn't realize it was gone.
You're not a Toys R Us kid.
Yeah. I did grow up crap. But yeah, so
Anyhow.
imagine, so banks are constantly investing in businesses like that. And there's no way you can tell if a business is going to succeed or if a business is going to keep going or if a business is going to fail. So how can you guarantee somebody to get a return on their investment? It's it's to guarantee like that is fraud at its very core. So that's why fractional reserve. I mean, I probably was a little too generic with my explanations of fractional reserve lending. There's all kinds of books written about the process of fractional reserve lending and how this kind of led to the Great Depression, because that was the idea. Was, all these bank runs are happening, and then they established the Federal Reserve to get rid of bank runs. Well, all that does is push the can down the road and actually inflate this huge bubble, and we get to the stock market being entirely supported by all of this money that doesn't really exist. And so when it crashes, that's the market coming back to reality. It's like, okay, we only have so many millions of dollars actually in circulation, and yet you're spending as if we have trillions or billions of dollars in circulation. Well, the market's going to collapse to meet the actual amount of money, and when it does, well, guess what? All that money that you thought was there, it's all pretend. Gone. It's all gone. It disappears overnight, and you're like, oh, now I'm back to what reality is, and yeah, that's the Austrian school's kind of, or this is a generic summation of what the Austrian school considers business cycle, and it's all
here you go, guys.
Almost entirely blamed on the Federal Reserve and the practice of fractional reserve lending.
Hear this. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she was born in the 1930s. My grandfather lived through it.
Yeah.
If we keep going the way we are, we'll end up the same spot they were.
Yes. So what people in the Austrian School of Economics are talking about right now is the way that they solved the housing crisis didn't solve the housing crisis. What they did in order to prop up those banks is they moved that bubble to the stock market. Because right now the stock market's doing great, and Donald Trump is like, yeah, stocks are up and we're getting... But again, it's all based on that we only have this much of actual money, and yet there's this much that we're moving around in the stock market. So eventually the stock market's going to have to collapse to what reality is, and that's going to have even more of a devastating effect than what the housing bubble was supposed to have had. Because in order to detract from the housing bubble, they inflated the stock market bubble and probably a couple other sectors as well. The stock seems to be the big one. That is a huge bubble at the moment that's going to pop eventually, and when it does, we're going to see a huge collapse, and then they'll probably try to find some other sector to prop up and inflate into a bubble, and then they're like wondering, and then we'll start to see all of these collapses, and then eventually we're going to run out of bubbles to inflate.
It'll be a vicious cycle.
Okay, I have a question.
And it seems like the root cause is fractional reserve lending. That's the analysis that I'm trying to articulate. Okay.
My thing is, what's your guys' opinions on people getting like disability and whatnot?
Depends on what it like. I mean,
depends on the disability.
It depends on the disability, and it depends on how long, and it depends on.
Like
I would say it depends on the cause of it.
Yeah.
My thing is,
like, what I do have like issues, for example, that morbidly obese people are able to collect disability. I'm like, giving the money is a very bad idea. They're just going to waste it on food.
Yeah, if it's something that's entirely your own doing, why should you get compensated for that? Because had you done what you should have to prevent it, then there would be no cost whatsoever.
Yeah.
My thing is...
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Hang on a second. Trainer's trying to say something, so go ahead, Trainer.
Go ahead.
My thing is, give the disability to the vets that actually bust their ass 365 days out of the year serving our damn country instead of these lazy fucks that don't want to get up and get a job.
Damn straight.
Okay, you have no disagreement with me there.
Yeah, I would slightly
I'm
disagree with
serious.
you. So I mean, because I was in there, and I do know I'm familiar with people who have taken advantage of the system and gotten disability for their military career when that disability had nothing to do with their military career. I understand the sympathy. To me, that was okay. So I'm prior military. I do qualify for some form of disability, and this is what family members who have been in the military, as well as friends who have been in the military, keep telling me that I should take advantage of that. But I will not, because the Air Force is not the reason for that disability. The reason for this disability is sleep apnea. I have sleep apnea. I've had sleep apnea for as long as I can remember. It wasn't diagnosed until I was in the Air Force. So I've had this, so the issue that I was running into, I've had since I was a kid. So to then charge the Air Force for that disability seems like an abuse of the system, because the Air Force didn't cause it. The Air Force didn't make it worse. All the Air Force did was identify it for me, because I didn't realize I had this condition. I thought this was normal. I thought these were, like, oh, I'm just extremely tired a lot. But then again, a lot of people are tired. I'm like, no, it's because I'm not breathing when I'm sleeping, and I keep waking myself up several times a night because I'm not breathing correctly. And that means I'm groggy and I'm sleepy. And, some days I would go through like normal, and other days I have this mild narcolepsy where I will fall asleep. So I'm actively doing something, I'm asleep, I don't know how long goes by, wake up, and keep going. I don't notice these little sleep spells, because last thing I remember was actively doing something, but usually they are not, I'm talking 5-10 minutes at a time, not hours. And I don't realize I'm asleep, and other people will be like, dude, what the hell just happened there? So somebody has to point these out to me, and I have to be paying attention to make sure that they don't happen. So, but this is something that wasn't pointed out to me till I was in the Air Force. In that situation, I don't feel comfortable charging the Air Force for that disability. Now, there's other people who were on flight lines, and their hearing is now impaired, and they get, not tinnitus, what's the other one? Starts with a T. Not tinnitus, right? Is it tinnitus?
I think maybe it is tinnitus.
Okay, what's the, which one is the rust issue, and which one is the ringing in the ears?
Jaw?
No. Tetanus, right. Okay, yeah, so it is tinnitus. Tinnitus is so they have ringing in their ears. It's permanent, but that's because they're on the flight lines. They're standing right next to jets that are taking off constantly, and even if you've got hearing protection, well,
it still goes through.
Yeah, it still goes through, but there's also the issue of if you have all the required hearing protection, you can't do your job. So it comes to the situation as, oh, I need to do my job in order to get the things going. So a lot of times these people will just put the earplugs in but not the headsets on, because otherwise they can't hear what the other people in the area are saying. But then to get the job done, that's what they have to do. But then that affects their hearing because, it's
sleeping. I'm heading out. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks for joining me, and congratulations. So those situations, like, yes, had they not joined the Air Force, had they not done it, they wouldn't have had that condition currently. It wouldn't be hindering their current life. That's what I'm okay with. But I do know other people who game the system, and sometimes this is secondary accounts. This is other people referring what they overheard, and sometimes this has been the actual individual telling me directly this is what they did. There are certain conditions in the military that you can claim, and they have no way of proving it.
Yeah.
Tinnitus is one of them. How do they know if you have tinnitus?
True.
There's no test you can do to make sure that you have a ringing in your ears. So that is a 10% disability. So some people that don't have the condition have claimed the condition and have claimed other pains and aches and things like that to get 20 or 30% disability, and they're like, no, and the reason I can tell these people have lied about it as far as a disability, or because the reason it's a disability is it hinders your ability to work, or it hinders your ability to get income. And the odd thing is, or well, the reason I know these people have been directly lying is sometimes they've told me, but other times these people have taken jobs where that would be those conditions would prevent them from performing that job. So they get out of the Air Force or they get out of the military, they have these, these disability benefits, and they take jobs that those disabilities would prevent them from doing.
Yeah, and to also answer a little more specifically, if it's a permanent disability, like for instance, like when I broke
loss of limb is huge, right? There's
like,
plenty of people come back with, they're involved in an IED or some kind of thing, and now they've got a loss of limb. Yeah, that's definitely on the military. That's undoubtable.
Or just in general, like if it's a permanent disability, whether or not you're in the military, I'd say I'd be fine with it being covered under welfare. If it's something, but under welfare, I'd say that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so yeah, there's other issues. So similar to what Loudmouth was saying with obesity. So there are certain conditions that are caused by being overweight that the military will give you disability benefits for. So there's there's incidents where somebody has had a condition that caused them to be to leave their Air Force service early, right? They claimed medical disability. The military voted to, okay, we're going to let you leave and we're going to give you a percentage of your retirement based on your disability. And then that person lost weight, disability's gone. And now they get their disability and they have none of the negative consequences because it was the result of their excess weight.
Mm-hmm.
So this is talking about, usually this is something like back pain or type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
Diabetes. It's diabetes. Diabetes. That's how you pronounce it.
When you
not
say
Wilford Brimley.
Whenever
Diabetes.
you get in some video, you would always say it, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, because that's Wilford Brimley. Like, I've got diabetes.
Okay, guys.
So I agree that we shouldn't be giving it out to everyone, but I do think, and as far as the military, I don't know how you can get around preventing people from lying about it and getting the disability that they shouldn't actually have. I don't know if there's a good way to do that, and maybe it's you just got to accept that the majority of people who are on it deserve it, and it's part of their career, and then there's going to be a small percentage that don't deserve it, and you can't avoid it.
Yeah. And I'd also, personally, and this is just me personally, I wish I could get everyone off of it to where they don't need it, instead of going the hardcore Republican route of just kicking people off. But I would kick off people who don't need it. I would keep on those that do need it, and I do think that I want people's view of welfare to change. Like, people used to feel ashamed about it, right? When it first started, people would hang their heads in shame being on welfare and food stamps, and now some people hold it up as a badge of honor. I would like to get people to think of it as, okay, I shouldn't feel ashamed of being on it, but I want them to have the feeling of, I shouldn't be ashamed of being on it, but I kind of should be getting off of it as soon as I can. I think you told a story of where you were on welfare and you wanted to get the hell off of it as soon as possible.
Yes. So there was, so during that time where I was unemployed and homeless for a bit, and then had a place where I couldn't afford my rent and was begging for rent money. That was during the same time where that was on top of the welfare. And I was like, okay, I need to get off of this as soon as possible. And so then I finally had some investments that were paying off, and I was finally able to pay everything, and I was finally able to stop taking money from the welfare. That was all of that was within that same period of time. So
yeah.
Okay, guys.
That's it.
It
was a situation where I felt guilty because I was asking people for money. I felt guilty because I was taking money from the welfare system, and I knew that meant I'm not producing what I need to produce for society, and society is giving me, and I'm taking money at the end of a gun. So that's why I'm like, I need to get off of this, and that's why I am trying to do everything I can to make enough money so that way I can pay every bit of it back with interest.
Yeah. Trainer, what were you gonna say?
Okay. Has anyone heard of the disease called whooping cough?
Whooping cough? Or ooping?
Whooping cough.
The one that if you cough so hard, it can end up you paralyzed.
I think you're talking about whooping cough. I've
Yeah.
heard of that. Never had it, thank God, but...
I have an aunt. They said she wouldn't live past her 30s. She's in her 60s now.
Mm-hmm.
In a wheelchair. People like that should get disability.
Well, I'm not arguing against that. I'm like, if it's a permanent disability, I would never cut it off, but I'd say that if it's something like eventually you're going to get off of, I'd say 5 years you're done. Or unless there was a very, very extenuating circumstance, then maybe there would be an extension, but at some point you do have to just cut it off. But in that case you're describing, then I wouldn't argue against keeping her on disability.
I mean,
my thing is, my grandmother won't file for disability for her.
I mean that, and she has my full respect for that, because I know plenty of other people in that situation that would. That is a
And the last time I actually saw my aunt walk was when I was younger.
Yeah, but so the issue is okay, and it is getting close to the time where I do need to log off here.
Yeah, that's why I tweeted.
Yeah.
I didn't tweet. I mean, I posted it in the Google Hangout chat to ask off the air how much time you got left, just so we don't take up too much time.
Yeah, so I've got. I'll try to get this thought out as quick as possible. So I think that's commendable that you said it was your aunt or whatever that isn't taking the money, because so many other people would. And the problem with that situation is when you start handing out money for something, for anything, not only are you going to get the people who currently need it, but you're going to get people who did not previously need it showing up asking for those handouts. And it's this mentality that we used to have that has kind of gone out the window, where you didn't want somebody else's charity, you wanted to make it on your own. And relying on somebody else's charity was a sign of weakness or a sign of failure on your part. And this is like, I'm not a big fan of Russell Crowe at all, but there's this movie called Cinderella Man, and this is one of my like all-time favorite scenes in film history. So there's a scene where he's going around begging for money to his friends and former coworkers and stuff like that in order to pay the rent and feed his family. And just the expressions on his face and the pure humility. And he hates the fact that he has to do this, because, I mean, I see this, I'm like, okay, that was me when I was in a similar situation. That's why I guess it rings with me. And I'm like, that's what we've lost in the United States, because we've said, if you have a situation, you're guaranteed to get money. And people become ungrateful for what they give. People who are on welfare constantly, this is why they have no desire to get off of it, because, hey, this is what I have coming to me. Wait, you're trying to take this away from me? That's my right. That's what... It's not the, thank you for this charity, thank you for these donations. It's like, hey, give me mine. Give me what I got coming to me. It's a complete shift in attitude. Whereas if you know that it's only through the kindness of strangers, it's only through the generosity of others that you are able to get by, and you know, okay, this is not something I want to do, this is not something I ever want to put you in the position to have to do, it's a complete shift of fundamental values. It's a shift from I'm trying to do everything I own or everything I can to be a productive member of society, to contribute, to make everything better or less of a burden for everyone else, to the I don't care if it's a burden for everybody else. I'm going to do whatever I need. I'm going to take what I have coming to me, take everything I can, and there's no concern for other people. And I know, so this is a common misconception of people who are anarcho-capitalists or libertarian in general, like, oh, you just want to be by yourself and you don't care about other people. And it's like, I care about other people, so I don't want to be a burden on everyone else. If I do one thing and I'm not a burden on anybody else, that's more than what I could do with all of their projected, all the policies that they want to implement. If all I could do is be like, hey, I'm nobody else's responsibility, and you no longer have to worry about me. You no longer have to shoulder the weight of my life. That's more than all of these policies put together could ever contribute. Is if we get more people reliant or independent and stop being a burden on other people, that lightens the load for everybody. Whereas all these government programs are like, oh, we're trying to help out these people in their situations. It's like, well, you're adding burdens to everybody as a whole. And sure, it's an insignificant amount per individual helped, but there's so many individuals being helped that it all adds up, and it's all weighing everybody down and keeping us all from. Whereas each person you would take off of welfare lightens the load on everybody, and eventually you get to the point where everybody is better off because there's nobody on welfare. And that's what we're trying to get to, but you can't get to that without the mindset that being on welfare is not a right, or it's not a guaranteed, it's not something that you're entitled to, but it's something that you should be grateful for. It is charity. It is out of the kindness of strangers that you have access to it in the first place.
Guys.
And that comes from your fundamental view of the world. Is your fundamental view of the world to be a collective where everybody's responsible to everyone? Or is your fundamental view of the world to be as independent as possible, so that way you can be in a position to help others without being a burden? All right, and so I think that's where I'm going to end it, because I do have to go. I've got people coming over.
All right.
So thank you guys for your time, and hopefully you learned something. Hopefully I provoked a thought. Hopefully I got you to at least consider or think, or maybe like, hey, maybe you need to look into this. And maybe I'm wrong about fractional reserve lending. This is something I need to emphasize. I'm probably wrong about everything. More than likely I'm wrong about everything. So double check on it, and if you see something I've said that is incorrect, call me out on it. Do your research, show me where I am wrong, because that'll make me better off, and that'll make you better off.
Yeah.
Don't
and
accept
that is
what I
where
say
I'll wrap
blindly.
it up here.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'll wrap it up right here. Thank you, everyone who joined. And I don't really have a phrase to end this off with other than Colt Ham doesn't understand guns and fuck gun control. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.